Okay, so we have here the priming activity before we have our lecture. So there's a picture showing different animals and they were given a test. According to the person giving the test, for a peer selection, everybody has to take the same exam. And the exam is, please climb that tree. So do you think the test is fair? Okay, let's proceed with the second priming activity. As you can see on the two pictures, they are watching a game. So there are three people having different characteristics. The first is a baby, the second is a child, and the last is the father. So they have different heights, as you can see on the first picture. On the principle of equality, they are standing on the same size of leverage or chair. So, do you think it has something to do with fairness? Do you think that all of them can watch, applying the principles that they have different characteristics? Okay, so I will just leave the question to you, and we will be proceeding with the second picture, applying the principles of equity. So as you have seen, the tallest person or the father is not standing on a leverage, and the child is standing on just one leverage, and the baby, the smallest, is using two leverages to see or to watch over the game. So do you think it has something to do with fairness regardless of their individual characteristics? And which of the two pictures shows fairness when it comes to purpose? Fairness in assessment. It refers to the consideration of learners' needs and characteristics and any reasonable adjustments that need to be applied to take account of them. It is important to ensure that the learner is informed about, understands, and is able to participate in the assessment process and agrees that the process is appropriate. It is also including an opportunity for the person being assessed to challenge the result of the assessment and to be reassessed if necessary. Ideally, an assessment should not discriminate between learners except on grounds of the ability being assessed. For the Code of Fair Testing, Code of Fair Testing Practices in Education, prepared by the Joint Committee on Testing Practices in 1988, presents for educational test developers and users in four areas: developing and selecting tests, interpreting scores, striving for fairness, and informing test takers. So test developers should strive to make tests that are as fair as possible for test takers of different races, gender, ethnic backgrounds, or handicapping conditions. Code urges test developers and test users to have the following: to review and revise insensitive test content on language, to investigate different test performances and ensure construct relevant factors are not being assessed, to provide accommodations for test takers with disability, and to have access to test and impact of testing practiced. We have different types of fairness. Fairness for students or learners, fairness for teachers, fairness for raters, fairness for parents, and fairness for the rest of the society. So again, as we define fairness, it is difficult to provide a precise definition of fairness because there is no single standpoint from which a test can be viewed as fair or unfair. What sounds to be fair to students might not be considered as unfair to parents, teachers, or policymakers. The main concerns of fairness are the following: validity, access, and justice. So for validity, we have specific focus on construct validity, content and format bias, differential item, test function, insensitive language, stereotyping in test-taking groups. And for the axis, we have financial affordability, geographical location and distance, personnel, accommodations for disabled persons, and educational, opportunity to learn equipment and test conditions. And for justice, we have societal equity and legal challenges. Let us discuss each main concerns of fairness. So we have validity. The focus is on whether test score interpretations have equal construct validity and reliability for different test taker groups as defined by salient test taker characteristics such as gender, race, ethnicity, field of specialization, and native language and culture. Next, we have construct irrelevant factors. For the consent bias, construct irrelevant factors might cause unfairness among groups include topical knowledge and technical terminology, specific cultural content, and dialect variations. For the format bias, this could include multiple choice, constructed response, computer-based responses, and multimedia materials. For insensitive or offensive test materials and materials that stereotype, we have construct irrelevant factors that show certain test taker groups in unfavorable light. For the axis, the focus is on whether tests are accessible to test takers from various aspects such as financial, geographical, personal, and educational access and familiarity with test conditions and equipment. Okay, for the construct irrelevant factors, we have financial access. In terms of affordability, it is the key concern as the consequences of unaffordable tests in all regions should be known to test developers and test users. For the geographical access, to test sites is critical and varies from context to context. For the personal access, it is providing appropriate accommodations in test administration procedures for test takers with disability or impairment. And for educational access, it is the opportunity to learn which plays a major role in test taker success on tests. And lastly, access to test-taking equipment and test-taking conditions. Being familiar with these conditions, the use of computers in computer-based tests, and the use of multimedia in web-based testing. Okay, for the justice, the focus is on justice in terms of societal equity and legal challenges. For the construct irrelevant factors, we have societal equity. They focus on the social consequences of testing in terms of whether testing programs contribute to social equity or not. For the legal challenges, we have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and subsequent related legislation provides remedies for persons who feel they are discriminated against due to their gender, race, ethnicity, native language, national origin, and so on. For fairness in research studies, not many in number nor part of the coherent research program either on fairness in language assessment over the last 15 years. So most of these studies are generally post hoc analysis and independent studies that are not part of a coherent fairness research program that is part of the test development, maintenance, and research program. Fairness and test development. This presents the stages and the fairness concerns that need to be focused on for optimum administration of the fairness agenda. So, I will be presenting a table on the next slide. Fairness concerns and stages of test development. So we have here stages such as thinking, writing, piloting, analyzing, maintenance, and research. Under thinking, the fairness concerns involve validity, construct, consent, informant, scoring, and reporting. Under access, it's financial, affordability, geographical location, and distance. For personnel, it's accommodations. For education, it's opportunity to learn, equipment, and test condition. And for justice, it is societal equity. Under writing, we have validity, task, topics, canon, language standards, insensitive language review, stereotyping of societal groups. Under piloting, we have validity, norming samples, and for analyzing, we have validity, item test, analysis, internal structure, scoring raters, differential item or test functioning, speeded nest, and for justice, we have societal equity. And lastly, we have maintenance and research. Under validity, all access, under access, all areas, and for justice, all areas. Okay, so we have the thinking stage. It involves thinking about the constructs, content, and possible tasks and task methods, and thinking about scoring and reporting issues. It is critical that issues of access are discussed at this stage and not left until a later stage. In terms of justice, test developers should check to see if the tests under the development will generally bring about societal equity rather than disharmony. Under writing stage, it includes decisions such as operationalization of constructs into actual written tests, include discussions regarding the canon from which topics and tests may be chosen. The discussion should center around whether the canon is something that all potential test takers share and learn. Decisions regarding the language standards or dialects that are to be adopted for the test need to be made by the developers and writers. After tests are written, reviews of tests for insensitive language and stereotyping of societal groups needs to be conducted. Piloting stage. Test is typically piloted or pre-tested with a norming sample from the intended test-taking population. The sample should be a truly representative sample and not a sample of convenience. For the analyzing stage, the data collected from test takers is analyzed. Traditional item analysis, internal structure analysis, rating reliability, and rater conduct should be conducted. Investigations of differential item, task, or testlet functioning should be conducted in order to be able to state confidently that score differences in performance of the test from different test taker groups are due to relevant construct variance. The issue of the speededness needs to be investigated so that the speed of the test is not felt differently by the various test taker groups. For example, non-native speakers as opposed to the native speakers. The analysis should also include how the test might contribute to societal equity. For the maintenance and research stage, all fairness concerns itemized should be routinely investigated. Fairness and legal challenges. Examples of challenges. As an example, one ground for legal challenge has been based on the perception that there is a lack of societal equity due to tests that track and classify students in schools. Challenging a test is possible, but until appropriate legislation and a code of standards exists, test takers may have difficulty seeking and obtaining remedies. From the test developer's perspective, a test can be challenged because standards and legislation do not exist or are somewhat poorly defined. Fairness in test developers. Best way to attain fairness in a test. Test developers such as thinkers, writers, raters, and researchers are from a diverse group in terms of gender, race, ethnicity, native language, and etc. Test developers train to examine all aspects of a test for its fairness, so that they can obtain different viewpoints concerning the canon, topics, task, format, examine tests for specific fairness concerns, and set a research agenda that can enhance fairness. For the conclusion, this report aims to present fairness in language assessment consists of validity, access, and justice. Fairness is critically connected to research, test development, legal challenges, and test developers. Fairness is a critical central component, not just connecting traditional components like validity and reliability. If a test is not fair, there is little or no value in it, being valid and reliable, or even authentic and interactive. For my references, here are Brown D. 2004, Language Assessment, Principles and Classroom Practices, White Plains, New York, Pearson Education Incorporated. Hughes, 2008, Testing for Language Teachers, United Kingdom, Cambridge University Press, and McNamara T. 2008, Language Testing, Oxford, New York, Oxford University Press. This would be the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Good day and mabuhay everyone.